The rise of hate on the right is, I mean, just astonishing since Trump's election. I have some statistics I'm going to share with you here in just a minute, but just this, and I think a lot of this kind of came to the fore with Laura Ingram's rant on Fox News day before yesterday, where, she said the America we know and love is being wiped out basically by, people of color coming here. Now, she said, this is not about race or class, but she might as well have just started, it was so obvious that when she doubled down last night and said, well, I said it wasn't about race or class, it was like, yeah, all the people watching Fox are going, yeah, we know what's going on, Laura, it's all good. All these, white Fox viewers. This has the potential to really, really, really damage this country. And, on the one hand, I mean, as this is getting jacked up and brought out. On the other hand, it's always been here. I mean, this is a country founded in genocide of Native Americans and the slavery of Africans. And it's, if we don't acknowledge that, and we don't look at how, as a consequence of the institutions that protected male white power at the conquering of this continent in the 1600s, through the 1700s, through the 1800s, through the 1900s, it changed in its form. It went from genocide to slavery to we still, by and large, herd Native Americans into reservations and redlining and all these other things that have happened historically. And continue to on a de facto rather than a de jure basis, in actual fact rather than at law. We still have racial discrimination in this country. In fact, probably the largest area where that's happening is in our schools, because we still have a property tax-based school system, which was put into place from the get-go so that poor communities of color would have bad schools and wealthy white communities would have good schools. It was just that simple. I mean, that's why our schools, when we first, in the late 19th century and throughout the early 20th century, while Woodrow Wilson was screening the birth of a nation in the White House, we set up a public education system nationwide that was specifically designed to enhance white privilege and to keep poor people, broadly speaking, but particularly poor people of color, down. And now we're seeing this writ large. And there's all these dimensions to it. America's hate groups, this Abigail Hauslohner, this is writing about a year and a half ago in the Washington Post, America's hate groups and particularly anti-Muslim groups are on the rise. The SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, says that, Trump has, quote, electrified the radical right. The report says hate groups in the United States, now keep in mind this is a year and a half ago, says hate groups in the United States nearly tripled last year, the number of hate groups. Nearly 50 of these new additions are just, in and of itself, are local chapters of ACT for America, an anti-Muslim group that Mike Flynn, the guy who was Trump's national security advisor, was a member of their board of directors. The Klan is actually losing members, or at least it was a year and a half ago. I don't know where they're at right now, but what had happened was people are taking a, quote, more intellectual approach, according to Mark Potok over at SPLC. He says that they're turning to think tanks and nonprofits, and they've rebranded themselves. He says the alternative right, or alt-right, is rebranding of white supremacy for public relations purposes. But there's all these new companies, Identity Europa in California, the 29 clubs created by the Daily Stormer website, the neo-Nazi website, which, by the way, changed its masthead. Again, this is a year and a half ago. I'm not sure if this is still the case. From the world's most visited alt-right website to America's #1 most trusted Republican news source, the Daily Stormer. The FBI reported a 60% rise in hate crimes targeting Muslims in 2015. And in the first 34 days following Trump's election, over 1,097, quote, bias incidents, more than a third of those incidents, quote, directly referencing either Trump, his Make America Great Again slogan, or his infamous remarks about grabbing women by the genitals. We're seeing this over at, I don't have a link on this. Race-related crime, this is a California State University report. Race-related crimes up 12.5% last year in 2017. And here are some numbers here. Identity Dixie, this is current information. In 2017, completely new groups sprouted up. Patriot Front, the Fraternal Order of Alt Knights, Identity Dixie, and others. Groups that latch on to Trump flourished. Identity Europa went from 1 chapter in 2016 to 15 in 2017. The Right Stuff expanded from 4 chapters to 21 and spawned Identity Dixie. Vanguard America grew from 12 to 25. New voices like Mike Enoch became players in the movement. Richard Spencer, Hail Victory, Hail Trump. Sieg Heil, by the way, is German for Hail Victory. Launched, this big college tour, all this kind of stuff. I mean, this is growing. Meanwhile, the NFL began their preseason yesterday. And the Philadelphia Eagles, Malcolm Jenkins, Devontae Bosby, and Chris Long protesting. In this case, Chris Long had his hand on Bosby's shoulder while Bosby and Jenkins raised their fists during the pledge. Kneeling, the Miami Dolphins, Kenny Steele and Albert Wilson, and their teammate, Robert Quinn, raised a fist. So what does Trump do? He goes out and says, how dare they? They're defying a presidential order. I am the emperor. Speaking of which, just as an aside, just a quick aside, Louise and I were going someplace yesterday. We were going to dinner with our kids and listening to NPR and in the car, and there was a discussion, I believe this was on Terry Gross's show on Fresh Air. The fellow said that foreign governments have learned that Trump's foreign policy now is based on who likes him, who treats him well. So, it's like everything is being personalized around Donald Trump. It's like he thinks he's the emperor. We're back to, 300, 400, 500 years ago in Europe, where the royal families were absolute rulers, and the relationship between two different regions or countries or even kingdoms or counties with castles was based on who the king liked and who he didn't like. And it's one of the reasons why royal families are all intermarried all over Europe. This family's cousin would marry that family's daughter or son or whatever, and by merging the families, now our countries are allies. It's all about, dear leader. It's not about, this was before, the rise of democratic republics. It was not about what are the policies. Now, our policies are all about dear leader. And dear leader is defining our foreign policy. Dear leader is now defining our, I'm not sure what you would call this, our perspective on race, I suppose. With Donald Trump's, going after these guys, 4 members of the Jacksonville Jaguars, waited in the tunnel. 3 members of the Seattle Seahawks did the same. And Trump is going after them personally. I am their leader. I am their Führer is the word for leader, right? In German. This is grim stuff. And not only that, reported hate crimes with racial or ethnic bias jumped the day after Trump was elected. They almost tripled. More reported hate crimes on November 9th, 2016 than any other day that year. And then the Washington Post says, it's unclear why this would be. Really?